Hello, I am Joshua Maloney, and this is my presentation for Environmental Instrumentation for Professor Etter's ENV 201. Here's my site plan. You can see Race Lane to the north, a chunk of land in the middle, and then on the north side of Mystic Lake, we have Site A and Site B. Site A is located on a sandy beach, which is approximately 30 feet west of the path from the Race Lane townway to water. Surface water will be sampled from the shoreline. Site B is located east of Site A and is an ancient inlet from the bog across the street. Water that flows across the road appears to discharge into the lake's bottom from a pipe, which can be seen in the satellite photo. Surface water will be sampled from the stagnant inlet. Here are close-up photos of Site A and Site B. And here is the typical color of each water sample. Site A consistently was clear, where Site B was consistently brown. All data was acquired using a LabQuest and the appropriate SOP, in which we all wrote as students. Twice during this procedure, I tested for nitrogen. Both times the lake water tested 0 ppm, and the stagnant inlet tested 1 or 2 ppm. Here is a typical observation report from March 29th. It was essentially a form that I filled out on an iPad in the field. The bottom right of the sample form, you can see my sample chain of custody, in which I did take a sample, which later tested negative for E. coli. As I progressed through the semester, I moved over to digital sampling forms. This made it a lot easier and standardized the data that I had. Here is the weather report and atmospheric raw data. Same thing for Site A and Site B. The first graph we have is the forecasted versus atmospheric temperatures. Additionally, water temperature is graphed. The blue line is the weather underground temperature in Celsius. The orange line is the measured air temperature. The gray line is Site A's water temperature, and the yellow line is Site B's water temperature. The maximum forecasted air temperature was 17.78 degrees Celsius. The minimum was negative 8.33, and the average forecasted temperature was 8.13 degrees Celsius. The maximum atmospheric on-site temperature measured was 18.2 degrees Celsius. The minimum was negative 3.2 degrees Celsius, and the average was 11.4 degrees Celsius. The maximum forecasted humidity was 93%. The minimum was 32%, and the average was 48%. For measured atmospheric relative humidity, the maximum measured amount was 53.72%. The minimum was 24.44%, and the average was 39.91%. The maximum CO2 measurement was 51 parts per million, and the minimum was 30 parts per million. This reading was very consistent, and it did not appear affected by the road, which was only feet away. The next graph shows dissolved oxygen and temperature. The red with the dots is Site A's dissolved oxygen percent saturation. The yellow with the dots is Site B's dissolved oxygen percent saturation. And the temperatures of those are respectively shown as blue and gray. Site A's maximum water temperature was 15.6 degrees Celsius. The minimum was 5 degrees Celsius, and the average was 11.1 degrees Celsius. For Site B, the maximum water temperature was 12.2 degrees Celsius. The minimum was 9.1 degrees Celsius, and the average was 10.5 degrees Celsius. Site A's measured dissolved oxygen maximum was 12.21 milligrams per liter. The minimum was 9.86 milligrams per liter, and the average was 12.21 milligrams per liter. Site B's measured dissolved oxygen maximum was 7.14 milligrams per liter. The minimum was 2.22 milligrams per liter, and the average was 4.32 milligrams per liter. The lines on the graph show percent saturation, a measurement based on milligrams per liter of oxygen and the temperature. This chart shows further information that the Indian Ponds Association, which covers the Mystic Lake, has publicly available online. Here is the dissolved oxygen and temperature profile from the Indian Ponds Association graphed. On the left is the lake temperature shown versus lake depth, and on the right is the dissolved oxygen profile versus depth. It was initially thought that the bog may have discharged directly into the inlet. Almost immediately, I noticed that a pipe went under the road, under the pipe house, through the stagnant bog inlet, and went into the bottom of the lake. The red dotted line shows the expected path pipeway from the bog north of Race Lane to its discharge point at Mystic Lake. An apparent lack of dark sediment at the end of the pipe may indicate the water flow. In conclusion, the open lake water at Site A steadily remained clear, had a low odor, and held less sediments, where Site B was usually brown with a musty smell and held moderate sediments. Higher dissolved oxygen saturations were measured for the lake water at Site A and lower saturations for the stagnant water and the inlet in Site B. As the wind and wave churn the water on the lake surface, oxygen is mixed into the water, while the still outlet does not get mixed at all. Additional tests in the warmer season will likely show more life, including algae and bacteria. Further tests could include examinations of the water in the bog, the water that occasionally overflows through a pipe into the inlet, and the water discharged from the tube at the lake bottom. According to the additional research provided by Indian Ponds, it is expected that with an increase in water depth, temperature and dissolved oxygen will decrease. Thanks for watching my presentation. I hope you learned something. Stay in school.